Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, where stories and other random things take center stage. And welcome to today's video, where I will be recommending the first 12 recommendations for after Camelot Rising. So let us begin. But if you have not watched the Camelot Rising reviews, the playlist will be linked below. Please make sure to watch. It's lovely. It's fun. Anyway, the first two reads I recommend are from Kiersten White, and that is And I Darken and The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. And I Darken follows Raju and Lada, the brother and sister, and they basically get sent to the Ottoman Empire court, and we kind of follow their them as basically their journey as it happens, and how and basically what happens with them, and we also explore the relationship with Mehmed, who is basically the heir to the empire. So we kind of, it's really hard to explain for me. Like, that is like the best way I can explain it at the time. I need to reread that series. I want to make sure I review that. And then The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein is a retelling of Frankenstein. And basically, we follow. Who do we follow? Oh, we follow Elizabeth as Victor has disappeared and she is trying to find him, and she uncovers a couple of interesting things. The next two reads are Half Sick of Shadows and Ash Princess by Laura Sebastian. Half Sick of Shadows is a reimagining of the Arthurian legends, like Camelot Rising, but in the point of view of Elaine of Shalott. It is inspired by the poem The Lady of Shalott. And in this one, Elaine sees everything and she knows that she will die by being drowned. But in this story, she, Guinevere, um, Lancelot, and Morgana accompany Arthur to take the throne of Camelot. But they have to go on this quest in order to prove that he will be king. And Camelot basically chains them in a way, because, especially the women, because there's no magic allowed. There's also some specific rules for these for the women, but they still go along and help Arthur and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, this is a story of Elaine basically reclaiming her story and figuring out how far she's willing to go to change the future of her friends. So, yeah, Ash Princess, we follow Princess Theodosia, and she has basically been a prisoner of the Kaiser for like 10 years after her mother died. And now, after she was forced to do something quite unspeakable, she basically decides that, it's time that she reclaim her kingdom after it all happened, and after meeting, and after basically reacquainting herself with an old friend. The next three reads are also things I recommend, um, always at the same time, and those are Throne of Glass, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Is anyone surprised that I would recommend Sarah J. Maas here? No one? I knew it. But Throne of Glass follows Selena Sardathian, Otterland's assassin, who has been in the salt mines of Endovir for a year as a punishment for her crimes against the Empire. But one day, Dorian Haviljard, the crown prince. Why did I say princess? Never mind. The crown prince of the Otterland Empire comes to the mines and basically offers her a deal. And he says if she is his champion in his father's new tournament, where he wants to look for like an assassin, she will, and if she wins at the tournament as his champion, he will grant her freedom in 4 years, and she ends up accepting. The people she has to fight are 23 other men, and they are thieves, warriors, soldiers, criminals, and all and so forth. And she's basically the only woman. However, at some point, one of the competitors die, and then another. So she has to figure out who is killing them and basically try to keep herself alive in the process. A Court of Thorns and Roses starts out as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Feyre kills a fairy, and in turn, Tamlin, one of the lords of the High Lords of the of Prythian, takes her there in order to serve out her sentence as punishment. And she figures out there's some type of blight in the land, and then she finds out about a curse, and now she has to break it. Crescent City follows Bryce Quenlin, who is mainly known as a party girl, and she is that's basically what she's known. But one night she goes out, and that night, when she returns, she finds her friends, and they are dead. And 2 years after that, she has to find the same person that killed her friends is now active again, and she, along with an angel, hunt Athalar or Orion, basically have to work together in order to find out who did it before and who's doing it now. It's such a beautiful story. It's very long, but it's just beautiful. My 8th read is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. So An Ember in the Ashes follows Laya of Sarah. She is a scholar, and basically her people are enslaved to the Martial Empire, and she has to, and she is, she's the main one we follow, right? But we follow her along with another character. But basically, her brother ends up getting taken by the Empire due to the fact that he has some knowledge about how to make martial steel, which is basically the weapons. So she ends up seeking the resistance to try to get them to help her get them back. But in exchange, she has to go on a mission to Blackcliff, the military academy, and spy on the commandant, which is basically the most dangerous woman in the Empire. And she agrees to go in. She goes in as a slave. And on the other side, we follow Elias, who is someone who grew up in the Empire, but basically wants to leave it. It's a very interesting it's a very interesting story. It's 4 books. And here's another recommendation for number 9, something I reviewed quite recently, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha. Before reading, please be aware that the books do have a trigger warning for sexual assault, self-harm, and references to said sexual assaults. There is no implicit scene for sexual assault, like it's not outright described, but it is, like, the very beginning of it is kind of like shown a little bit, but it's not, the scene itself is not shown. But still know that there will be that in those books. So basically, this takes place in Ikara, and in this world there are 3 kinds of people or castes. There is the paper caste, which is the lowest caste, and they're humans, and they don't have any demonic or animalistic features. Then there is the middle caste, which is the steel. They are half demon and half human, and they tend to have some form of animalistic features. And then there is the moon caste, and they are full-on demons. So every year there is a tradition that 8 girls would be taken into the hidden palace, and they become the king's paper girls, or his concubines. Lay is taken from her village and by a general, and is taken to be one of the king's paper girls. And there, however, she ends up falling in love with one of the other paper girls. So they have to keep their romance hidden, as well as other things that are happening. Number 10 is another retelling, and that is Cinderella is Dead by Kaelyn Bayron. Cinderella is Dead is a very dark retelling of Cinderella. It takes place 200 years into the future. Cinderella is no longer alive, and neither is Prince Charming. But we follow our main character who basically is forced to go to the ball and have a husband choose her. And but she doesn't even want to do that. She ends up wanting to she'd rather be with her childhood friend and all that stuff. And she ends up at the night of the ball running away and ends up in Cinderella's mausoleum, or like her grave, her tomb basically. And there she meets Constance, who is one of Cinderella's descendants. And she finds out that things aren't as they seem to be in the Cinderella story. So, yeah, lovely. 11, I recommend the Kyoshi Novels by S.C. Yi. Basically, these are prequels to Avatar: Last Airbender, and they follow Avatar Kyoshi as she rises to in the beginning of her avatarhood. That is the best way I can explain that. And last but not least, Until Tomorrow, the Once Upon a Con series by Ashley Poston. Each of these is a retelling of a fairy tale. In Geekerella, it's Cinderella. In The Princess and the Fangirl, it's The Prince and the Pauper. And in Bookish and the Beast, it's Beauty and the Beast. And basically, they kind of both meet fandom, and it's great. It's great. It's amazing. They're companion novels. I definitely recommend that you read Geekerella first and read them in order, just because even though you don't have to, some of the stuff makes sense when you read them in order. And it's great. It's enjoyable. So with that, I will leave you to consume stories. I will come back tomorrow with 12 more recommendations, because guys, the reason I'm dividing them into parts is because I do a lot of these, and sometimes the videos turn out really long, and especially for this one where I basically have 37 recommendations. So yeah, these are my first 12. So I'll be back tomorrow for part 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and yeah, anyway, consume stories.